Chapter 2. I have examined the native life forms of over 2,000 planets. I have noted many examples of convergent evolution, but many more of divergence. Life, Volume 2, by Unspeak Baron Boddisy. It is first of all essential that we understand exactly what we mean by the well-used term convergent evolution. Especially, we must not confuse statistical probability with some transcendental and utterly compelling force. Consider the class of all possible objects, the number of which is naturally very large, infinite indeed, unless we impose an upper limit of mass and certain other physical qualifications. Thus imposing and so qualifying, we find that still only an infinitesimal fraction of this class of objects can be considered life forms. Before we have even started the investigation, we have exercised a very stringent selection of objects which by their very definition will show basic similarities. To particularize, there are a limited number of methods of locomotion. If we find a quadruped on planet A and a quadruped likewise on planet B, does this imply convergent evolution? No. It merely implies evolution, or perhaps no more than the fact that a four-legged creature can effectively stand without toppling and walk without stumbling. In my opinion, therefore, the expression convergent evolution is tautological. Ibid. From The Wages of Sin by Stridenko, article in Cosmopolis, May 1404. Brinktown, what a city! Once the jumping-off place, the last outpost, the portal into infinity, now just another settlement of the northeast middle beyond. But just another? Is this a fair description? Decidedly not. Brinktown must be seen to be believed, and even then the heart of belief depart incredulous. The houses are set far apart along shaded avenues. Still, they rise like watchtowers, thrusting up into and through the palms, viraboles, scalmettos, and it is a mean house which does not soar above the treetops. The ground level is no more than an entry, a raised pavilion where the clothes must be changed, for local habit ordains the use of paper house capes and paper slippers. Then, above, what an explosion of architectural conceits, what turrets and spires, belfries and cupolas, what jejune magnificence, what inspired scrimshaw, what intricate, inventive, farcical, wonderful applications and misapplications of likely and unlikely materials. Where else can one find balustrades of tortoiseshell studded with gold-plated fish heads? Where else do ivory nymphs hang suspended by their hair from the roof gutters, their faces expressing only bland benediction? Where else can a man's success be gauged by the sumptuousness of the tombstone he designs for himself and erects in his front yard, complete with panegyrical epitaph? And, in fact, where but in Brinktown is success such an ambiguous recommendation? Few, indeed, of the inhabitants dare show themselves within the oikumene. The magistrates are assassins, the civil guard, arsonists, extortionists, and rapists. The elders of the council, bordello owners. But civic affairs proceed with a punctilio and gravity worthy of the grand sessions at Borwickstone, or a coronation at the Tower of London. The Brinktown jail is one of the most ingenious ever propounded by civic authorities. It must be remembered that Brinktown occupies the surface of a volcanic butte, overlooking a trackless jungle of quagmire, thorn, eel vine, skiver, tussock. A single road leads from city down to jungle. The prisoner is merely locked out of the city. Escape is at his option. He may flee as far through the jungle as he sees fit. The entire continent is at his disposal. But no prisoner ever ventures far from the gate, and when his presence is required, it is only necessary to unlock the gate and call his name. T. Holt sat looking into the fire. Gersen wondered if he intended to say more. At last T. Holt spoke. So I left the planet, I could stay no longer. To live there, a person must either forget himself, give way completely to the beauty, drown his identity in it, or else he must master it, break it, reduce it to a background for his own constructions. I could do neither, so I can never go back. But the memory of the place haunts me. In spite of the wasps? Thibault nodded somberly. Yes, indeed. I did wrong to interfere. There is a rhythm to the planet, an equilibrium which I blundered into and disturbed. I've speculated for days, but I still don't understand the process completely. Wasps are born as fruit of the tree. The worms yield the seed to one kind of tree. This much I know. I suspect that the dryads produce the seed to the great giants. The process of life becomes a great circle, or perhaps a series of incarnations, with the great trees as the end result. The dryads seem to tap the worms for part of their sustenance. The wasps devour the dryads. Where do the worms come from? Are the wasps their first phase? Flying larvae, so to speak? Do the worms eventually metamorphose into dryads? I feel this must be the case, though I don't know. If so, the cycle is beautiful, in a fashion I can't find words to describe. Something ordained, stately, ancient, like the rotation of the galaxy. If the pattern were disturbed, if one link were broken, the whole process would collapse. This would be a great crime. So therefore you don't want to reveal the location of the world to your sponsor, whom you believe to be Malagate the Woe. I know to be Malagate, said Thibault stiffly. How did you find out? Thibault looked at him sidewise. You are very interested in Malagate. Gersen shrugged. One hears many strange tales. True. But I do not care to document them. And do you know why? No. I have changed my thoughts about you. Now I suspect you of weaselry. If I were a weasel, said Gersen, smiling, I'd hardly admit it. The IPCC has few friends beyond. I am unconcerned, said Thibault. But I hope for better days when I return home. I do not care to incur Malagate's animosity by identifying him to a weasel. If I were a weasel, said Gersen, you have already compromised yourself. You know of truth drugs and hypnotic rays. Yes. I also know how to avoid them. But no matter, it's not important. You asked how I learned that Malagate was my sponsor. I have no objection to telling you this. Through my own drunken prolixity. I put into Brinktown. In Sinsan's tavern I spoke at length, much as I spoke to you tonight, to a dozen enthralled listeners. Yes, I held their attention, Thibault laughed bitterly. Presently I was called to the telephone. The man at the other end said his name was Hildemar Dace. Do you know him? No. Odd, said Thibault, since you are so interested in Atel Malagate. But in any event, Dace spoke to me, told me to report to Smades. He said I'd meet Malagate here. What? Demanded Gersen. Here? Here at Smades. I asked, what's this to me? I had no dealings with Malagate and wished none. He convinced me otherwise. So I'm here. I am not a brave man. He made a small, helpless gesture, picked up his empty glass, looked into it. I don't know what to do. If I remain beyond, Thibault shrugged. Gersen considered a moment. Destroy the monitor filament? Thibault shook his head regretfully. It's the surety I carry for my life. Indeed, I'd rather... He stopped short. Did you hear anything? Gersen jerked around in his chair. No use denying his nervousness, at least not to himself. Rain? Thunder? I thought I heard tubes blowing. Thibault rose to his feet, peered from the window. Someone is coming. Gersen also went to the window. I see nothing. A ship dropped down into the field, said Thibault. He thought for a moment. There are only 2 ships there, yours and the Star King's. Where's your ship? I sat down in a valley to the north. I want no one meddling with my monitor. He seemed to listen. Then, looking into Gersen's eyes, he said, You are not a locator. No. T-Holt nodded. Locators are, by and large, a vile lot. You are not of the IPCC? Think of me as an explorer. Will you help me? The harsh precepts of Gersen's training contended with his impulses. He muttered ungraciously, Within limits, very narrow limits. T-Holt smiled thinly. What are these limits? My own business is urgent. I can't allow myself to be diverted. T-Holt was neither disappointed nor resentful. He could expect no more from a stranger. Odd, he said once more, that you do not know Hildemar Dace. But he will come in presently. How do I know? By the logic of plain, ordinary fear. You'll be safe so long as you stay inside the tavern, said Gersen. Smaid has his rules. T-Holt nodded, politely acknowledging the discomfiture he had caused Gersen. A minute passed. The Star King rose to his feet, his pink and red garment glowing in the firelight. He walked slowly up the stairs, looking neither to right nor left. T-Holt followed him with his eyes. Impressive creature. I understand that only the handsome ones are allowed to leave their planet. So I have heard. T-Holt sat looking into the fire. Gersen started to speak, then restrained himself. He felt exasperation with T-Holt, for a clear and simple reason. T-Holt had aroused his sympathy. T-Holt had entered his mind. T-Holt had burdened him with new troubles. He also felt dissatisfaction with himself, for reasons by no means so simple, in fact, for no rational reason whatever. Beyond argument, his own affairs were of paramount importance. He could not permit himself to be diverted. If emotion and sentiment could sway him so easily, where would such things stop? The dissatisfaction, far from being appeased, grew more insistent. There was a connection, too tenuous to be defined, with the world T-Holt had described, a sense of loss and longing, of some indefinable inadequacy. Gersen made a sudden, angry motion, swept all the irritating doubts and questions from his mind. They could only decrease his effectiveness. 5 minutes passed. T-Holt reached into his jacket, brought forth an envelope. Here are photographs you might be pleased to inspect at your leisure. Gersen took them without comment. The door slid back. 3 dark shapes stood in the gap, looking into the room. Smaid roared from behind the bar, Come in or stay out! Must I warm the whole cursed planet? Into the hall stepped the strangest human being of Gersen's experience. And there, said T-Holt with a sick titter, you see Beauty Dace. Dace was about 6 feet tall. His torso was a tube, the same gauge from knee to shoulder. His arms were thin and long, terminating in great bony wrists, enormous hands. His head was also tall and round, with a ruff of red hair and a chin seeming almost to rest on the clavicle. Dace had stained his neck and face bright red, excepting only his cheeks, which were balls of bright chalk blue, like a pair of mildewed oranges. At some stage of his career, his nose had been cleft into a pair of cartilaginous prongs, and his eyelids had been cut away. To moisten his corneas, he wore 2 nozzles connected to a tank of fluid, which every few seconds discharged a film of mist into his eyes. There was also a pair of shutters, now raised, which could be lowered to cover his eyes from the light, and which were painted to represent staring white and blue eyes similar to Dace's own. The 2 men at his back, by contrast, appeared ordinary, run-of-the-mill human beings, both dark, hard, competent-seeming, with quick, clever eyes. Dace made a brusque signal to Smaid, who stood impassively watching from behind the bar. 3 rooms, if you please. We will eat presently. Very well. The name is Hildemar Dace. Very well, Mr. Dace. Dace now sauntered across the room to where T-Halt and Gersen sat. His glance shifted from one to the other. "Since we are fellow travelers, house guests of Mr. Smade, let us introduce ourselves," he said politely. "My name is Hildemar Dace. May I inquire yours?" "I am Kirth Gersen." "I am Keelan Tanas." Dace's lips, pale purple-gray against the red of his skin, moved in a smile. "To an amazing degree you resemble a certain Lugo T-Halt whom I expected to find here." "Think of me as you like," said T-Halt in a reedy voice. "I have spoken my name." "But what a pity. I have business to transact with Lugo T-Halt." "It is pointless, then, to approach me." "As you wish, though I suspect that the business with Lugo T-Halt might interest Keelan Tanas. Will you step aside for a moment's private conversation?" "No, I am not interested. My friend knows my name. It is Keelan Tanas." "Your friend?" Dace turned his attention to Gersen. "Do you know this man well?" "As well as I know anyone." "And his name is Keelan Tanas?" "If this is the name he offers you, I suggest that you accept it." Without further remark, Dace turned away. He and his men went to a table at the end of the hall where they ate. T-Halt spoke in a hollow voice. "He knows me well enough." Gersen felt a spasm of irritation. Why should T-Halt feel impelled to embroil a stranger in his troubles if his identity were already known? T-Halt explained his act in the next breath. "Since I fight the hook, he thinks he has me trapped, and he amuses himself." "What of Malagate? I thought you would come here to meet him." "Better that I return to Alphanor and confront him there. I will return his money, but I will not lead him to the planet." At the end of the hall, Dace and his two companions were served with platters from Smade's kitchen. Gersen watched them for a moment. "They seem unconcerned." T-Halt sniffed. "They think that I will deal with Malagate, but not with them. I will try to escape. Dace does not know that I landed over the hill. Perhaps he thinks that your ship is mine." "Who are the other two men? Assassins?" "They know me well enough from the tavern at Brinktown. Tristano is an Earthman. He kills by touches of his hand. The other is a Sarkoi Venefice. He can brew stuff to kill from sand and water. All three are madmen, but Dace is the worst. He knows every horror there is to be known." Dace at this moment looked at his watch. Wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, he rose, crossed the room, bent over T-Halt. In a husky whisper, he said, "Atel Malagate awaits you outside. He will see you now." T-Halt stared at him with sagging jaw. Dace swaggered back to his table. Now T-Halt rubbed his face with quivering fingers, turned to Gersen. "I can still evade them if I can lose myself in the dark. When I run out the door, will you detain the three?" "How do you suggest I do this?" asked Gersen sardonically. T-Halt was silent a moment. "I don't know, nor do I, with the best will in the world." T-Halt gave a sad nod. "Very well, then, I will fend for myself. Goodbye, Mr. Gersen." He rose to his feet, walked to the bar. Dace slanted his eyes at him, but otherwise seemed disinterested. Beside the bar, T-Halt stood beyond the reach of his vision. Instantly, T-Halt darted into the kitchen out of sight. Smade looked after him with sardonic wonder. Dace and the two assassins stolidly continued their meal. Gersen watched covertly. Why did they sit with such unconcern? T-Halt's ruse had been pitifully obvious. Gersen's skin began to prickle. In spite of his resolve, he rose to his feet, went to the doorway. Pushing open the timber panels, he stepped out on the veranda. The night was dark, lit only by stars. The wind, for a wonder, was still. But the sea, swirling and flowing, sent up a muffled, sad sound. A short, sharp scream, a whimper from behind the tavern. Gersen abandoned his resolve and started forward. A grip like the pinch of steel seized his arm, tweaked nerves at the back of his elbow. Another hand clamped at his neck. Gersen let himself fall, broke the grip. He rolled over, bounced to his feet, stood in a half-crouch, shuffled slowly forward. Facing him with an easy smile stood Tristano, the Earthman. "Careful, friend," said Tristano in the clipped, flat Earth accent. "Give me trouble, and Smaid pitches you into the sea." Dace came out the door, followed by the Sarkoi poisoner. Tristano joined them. The three walked to the spaceport. Gersen remained on the terrace. 10 minutes later, 2 ships rose into the night. The first was a squat armored vessel with weapons fore and aft. The second was a battered old locator's ship, Model 9B. Gersen stared in wonder. The second ship was his own. The ships disappeared. The sky once more was empty. Gersen returned into the tavern and sat before the fire. Presently he brought forth the envelope given him by Lugo Tiholt, opened it, and extracted 3 photographs, which he examined for the better part of an hour. The fire burnt low. Smaid took himself off to bed, leaving a son dozing behind the bar. Outside, the night rains began to thrash down. Lightning crackled. The ocean groaned. Gersen sat in deep thought. Presently, from his pocket, he brought a sheet of paper which listed 5 names: Atel Maligate, the Woe, Howard Allen Treesong, Viol Falouche, Kokor Heckus, the Killing Machine, Lenz Lark. From his pocket he brought a pencil, but still he deliberated. If he continually added names to his list, he would never finish. Of course, there was no real need to write. There was no real need for a list. Gersen knew the 5 names as well as he knew his own. He compromised. To the right and below the last name of the original list, he appended a 6th name, Hildemar Dace. For a space he sat looking at the names, with 2 sides to his mind. The one so alive and passionate that the other, the cerebral, detached observer, felt a trace of amusement. The flames settled low. Chunks of fossilized moss glowed scarlet. The sea sound was slower and lower in pitch. Gersen rose to his feet and climbed the stone stairs to his room. During his life, Gersen had known little other than a succession of strange beds. Nevertheless, sleep came slowly, and he lay staring into the dark. Visions passed before him, from as early as he could remember. A landscape which, as he recalled it, was wonderfully pleasant and bright. There were tawny mountains, a village painted in faded pastel colors along the banks of a wide, tawny river. But this picture, as always, was followed by another even more vivid, the same landscape, littered with hacked and bleeding bodies. Men and women and children shuffled into the holds of 5 long ships, under the weapons of 200 men in what seemed strange and outlandish costumes. With an old man who was his grandfather, Gersen watched horrified from across the river, concealed from the slavers by the bulk of an old barge. When the ships had lifted, they returned across the river. Then his grandfather told him, "Many fine things your father had planned for you. Learning and useful work, and a life of satisfaction and peace. Do you recall this?" "Yes, grandfather." "The learning you shall have. You will learn patience and resource, the ability of your hands and your mind. You will have useful work, the destruction of evil men. What work could be more useful? This is beyond. You will find that your work is never done, so therefore you may never know a life of peace. However, I guarantee you ample satisfaction, for I will teach you to crave the blood of these men more than the flesh of woman." The old man had been as good as his word. Eventually they made their way to Earth, the ultimate repository of every sort of knowledge. Young Kirth learned many things, from a succession of strange teachers which it would be tedious to detail. He killed his first man at the age of 14, a footpad who had the ill luck to accost them in the back alley of Rotterdam, while his grandfather stood by, in the manner of an old fox teaching a cub to hunt. Young Kirth, gasping and sobbing, broke first the ankle, then the neck of the astonished assailant. From Earth they moved to Alphanor, capital planet of the Rigel Concourse, and here Kirth Gersen gained more conventional knowledge. When he was 19, his grandfather died, bequeathing him a comfortable sum of money and a letter which read, "My dear Kirth, I have seldom told of my affection and high regard for you. I take this occasion to do so. You have come to mean more to me than ever did my own son. I will not say I am sorry that I have set your feet on the path they now must take, even though you will be denied many ordinary pleasures and luxuries. Have I been presumptuous in so shaping your life? I think not. For several years you have been self-motivated and have showed no inclination to point yourself in any other direction. In any event, I can think of no more useful service for a man to perform than that which I have ordained for you. The law of man is bounded by the limits of the oikumene. Good and evil, however, are ideas which encompass the universe. Unluckily, beyond the pale, there are few to ensure the triumph of good over evil. Actually, the triumph consists of two processes. First, evil must be extinguished, then good must be introduced to fill the gap. It is impossible that a man should be equally efficacious in both functions. Good and evil, in spite of a traditional fallacy, are not polarities, nor mirror images, nor is one merely the absence of the other. In order to minimize confusion, your work will be the destruction of evil men. What is an evil man? The man is evil who coerces obedience to his private ends, destroys beauty, produces pain, extinguishes life. It must be remembered that killing evil men is not equivalent to expunging evil, which is a relationship between a situation and an individual. A poisonous spore will grow only in a nutrient soil. In this case, the nutrient soil is beyond, and since no human effort can alter the beyond, which must always exist, you must devote your efforts to destroying the poisonous spores, which are evil men. It is a task of which you will never see the end. Our sharpest and first motivation in this matter, agreed, is no more than a primitive ache for revenge. 5 pirate captains destroyed certain lives and enslaved others who were precious to us. Revenge is not an ignoble motive when it works to a productive end. The names of these 5 pirate captains I do not know. My best attempts have brought me no information. One man, an underling I recognized, his name is Parsifal Pankaro, and he is no less baneful than the 5 captains, though his potentialities for harm are less. You must seek him beyond and learn from him the names of the 5. Then you must kill the 5, and it will do no harm if they suffer pain in the process, for they have brought an immeasurable amount of pain and grief to others. There is still much for you to learn. I would advise you to join the Institute, except I fear that the disciplines of this body would not set well with you. Do as you think best. In my youth, I thought to become a catechumen, but destiny ruled otherwise. If I were friends with a fellow, I would send you to him for counsel, but I have no such friend. Perhaps you will be less constricted outside the Institute. Stringent conditions are imposed upon the catechumen through the first 14 degrees. In any event, I advise you to devote a time to the study of Sarkoi poisons and hand techniques, preferably on Sarkovi itself. There is room for improvement in your marksmanship and knife play, though you need fear few men at hand fighting. Your intuitive judgments are good. Your self-control, economy of action, and versatility are to be commended. But you still have much to learn. For the next 10 years, study, train, and be cautious. There are many other capable men. Do not rashly waste yourself against any such until you are more than ready. In short, do not make an over-virtue of courage or heroism. A goodly amount of caution, call it fear or even cowardice, is a highly desirable adjunct for a man such as yourself, whose one fault might be said to be a mystical, almost superstitious faith in the success of your destiny. Do not be fooled. We are all mortal, as I now attest. So, my grandson, I am dead. I have trained you to know good from evil. I feel only pride in my accomplishment, and hope that you will remember me with affection and respect. Your loving grandfather, Rolf Mar Gersen. For 11 years, Kirth Gersen obeyed the dictates of his grandfather, or exceeded them, meanwhile seeking, both within the oikumene and beyond, for Parsifal Pankaro, but fruitlessly. Few occupations offered more challenge, more hazard, more chilling rebuffs to incompetence than weaseling for the IPCC. Gersen undertook 2 assignments, on Farode and Blue Planet. During the term of this latter, he submitted a preemptive requisition for information regarding Parsifal Pankaro, and felt himself well rewarded to learn that Parsifal Pankaro currently resided at Brinktown, where he was Ira Bugloss, operator of a prosperous import business. Gersen found Ira Bugloss, or Pankaro, to be a burly, hearty man, egg-bald, his skin dyed lemon yellow, his mustachios wide, black, and luxuriant. Brinktown occupied a plateau which stood like an island in a black and orange jungle. Gersen scrutinized Pankaro's movements for 2 weeks and learned his routine, which was that of a man without a care. Then one evening he hired a cab, rendered the operator unconscious, and waited outside the Jadise Conversation and Flower Arranging Club until Pankaro tired of sporting with the inmates and emerged into the humid Brinktown night. Well pleased with himself, humming a tune he had only just learned, he staggered into the cab and was conveyed not to his sumptuous home, but to a remote clearing in the jungle. Here Gersen put questions which Pankaro had no wish to answer. Pankaro made an effort to hold his tongue, to no avail. Finally, 5 names were wrung from his memory. "Now what will you do with me?" croaked the erstwhile Ira Bugloss. "I will kill you," said Gersen, pale and quivering after exercise he did not enjoy. "I have made you my enemy. Furthermore, you deserve to die 100 times over." "At one time, yes," cried the sweating Pankaro. "Now I lead a blameless life. I injure no one." Gersen wondered if every such occasion would cause him such nausea, misgivings, and misery. He responded in a voice held crisp and even by enormous effort. "What you say perhaps is true, but your wealth stinks of pain, and certainly you will make a report to the first agent of any of the 5 you meet." "No, I swear not, and my wealth, take it all." "Where is your wealth?" Pankaro tried to make conditions. "I will lead you to it." Gersen shook his head sadly. "Accept my excuses. You are about to die. It comes to all men. You had best feel that you are requiting the evil you have done." "Under my tombstone!" screamed Pankaro. "Under the stone tombstone before my house!" Gersen touched a tube to Pankaro's neck, which spat a sarcoid poison into the skin. "I will go look," he said. "You will sleep until you see me again." Gersen spoke no more than the truth. Pankaro relaxed thankfully and was dead in seconds. Gersen returned to Brinktown, a deceptively placid settlement of tall, ornate 3-, 4-, and 5-story houses embowered among green, purple, and black trees. At twilight, he sauntered along a quiet back lane to Pankaro's house. The stone tombstone stood plain to see, a massive monument of marble spheres and cubes surmounted by a sculptured image of Parsifal Pankaro in a noble pose, head thrown back to the sky, arms outspread. As Gersen stood appraising it, A boy, 13 or 14 years old, stepped from the porch and approached Gersen. "Are you from my father? Is he with the fat women?" Gersen steeled his heart to the inevitable pangs and put aside all thought of confiscating Pankaro's wealth. "I bring a message from your father." "Will you come in?" inquired the boy, tremulously anxious. "I'll call my mother." "No, please don't. I have no time. Listen carefully. Your father has been called away. He is not sure when he can return. Perhaps never." The boy listened round-eyed. "Did he run away?" Gersen nodded. "Yes, some old enemies found him, and he does not dare show himself. He said to tell you or your mother that money is hidden under the tombstone." The boy stared at Gersen. "Who are you?" "A messenger, no more. Tell your mother exactly what I have told you. One more thing. When you look beneath the tombstone, be careful. There may be a trap to guard the money. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "Yes, a booby trap." "That's right. Be careful. Get the help of someone you can trust." Gersen departed Brinktown. He thought of Smade's planet, with its elemental quiet and isolation, precisely the antidote to his fretful conscience. Where, he asked himself as the locator boat skidded down a fracture in the continuum, did the balance lie? He had by no means reached the tipping point. Parsifal Pankaro deserved the callous execution he had received. But what of wife and son? They must bear the pain, but why? To protect the women and children of more deserving men from worse, so Gersen reassured himself. But the haunted, dark look of the boy's eyes would not leave his memory. Destiny led him. The first night at Smade's Tavern engaged him with Maligate the Woe, the first name Parsifal Pankaro had blurted forth. In his bed, Gersen heaved a deep sigh. Pankaro was dead. Poor, miserable Lugo T-Halt was probably dead. All men must die. Let there be an end to brooding. He grinned into the dark, thinking of Maligate and Beauty Dace examining the monitor of his ship. To begin with, they would be unable to open the monitor with their key, a formidable difficulty, even worse if they suspected thief-proofing of explosive poison gas or acid. When, after great travail, they eventually extracted the filament, it would show blank. Gersen's monitor was no more than window dressing. He had never bothered to activate it. Maligate would look questioningly at Beauty Dace, who would mutter some sort of objurgation. Perhaps then they would think to check the serial number of the ship, only to find that it was different from that issued to Lugo T-Halt. And then, swiftly back to Smade's planet, but Gersen would be gone.